Hi, all, and welcome back to Broadway Unexpected Special Guest Edition. Sorry, still can't get a better subtitle. I am very excited to say we have none other than Broadway actor Jay Armstrong Johnson on with us today. He was last in the national tour of Moulin Rouge as Christian and is best known for his role as in Our Town, Hair, A Chorus Line, Parade, 35mm. Need I go on? Great to have you on today, Jay.
Thanks, Maya. It's good to be here.
Thank you. So, kind of starting at the very beginning, if we're going chronological order, somewhat, so to speak, what was the show for you that kind of like, quote unquote, like gave you the theater bug or really inspired you to continue in theater?
If we're starting way early, I would have to
Hmm.
say it was in the fifth grade, in my English class, taught by none other than Mr. Ingram. And Mr. Ingram did this much abridged version of Romeo and Juliet every single year. So the fifth graders always put on Romeo and Juliet in front of the entire school body. And my sister played Juliet the year before when I was a fourth grader, and I had my sights set on playing Romeo. And there weren't too many boys in
Yeah,
Texas that wanted to put on white tights and recite Shakespeare. So it was probably that. That
yeah.
was probably gave me the bug.
And what was it like? I have to ask, what was it like making your professional debut at 13 with Kathy Rigby and Peter Pan? And
Uh, that was super fun. I mean, the audition for it was kind of wild. My friend's mom is who encouraged me to go audition, and I had never been to a professional audition before, and I walked in for the auditions, and I was turned away and told that they didn't have any more audition slots, and I went back to the car, dejected and sad, and my friend Reagan's mom took me by the arm and walked me back in there, and she told the audition monitor that we would not be leaving until you heard this boy sing. So
yeah,
thankfully, they heard me, and then I got cast, and it really was such an incredible experience. Getting to know Kathy and getting to work with professional actors and directors, and it really kind of solidified my passion and I guess, my conviction that
mhm,
that I knew so early that I wanted to be an actor for
yeah.
such a young age. Yeah.
Yeah. And what was it like doing theater in Fort Worth, which is obviously not a major theater city, but like still has a still have enough theater, but obviously not a major theater city. Like, how would you still develop that connection, even though you're not like one of the big like metropolises, so to speak, of the theater?
I mean, I guess in Texas, there's like three major metropoli for theater, and that's
Yeah.
Houston and Austin and DFW. So, really, what's wild is that Dallas Fort Worth is actually one of the biggest um, metropoli in the country. Like,
Yep.
I didn't realize that Fort Worth is actually like the 11th largest city in terms of population in the country.
Yeah.
So the arts in Dallas Fort Worth are really kind of vast and huge. And
Yep.
I mean, even at my performing arts high school, um, there are a few of us that I grew up with at that high school that have gone on to really incredible Broadway careers. Like Lily Froelich and Ahmad Simmons and Tiffany Mann and even Vanessa Becerra has a really beautiful international career as a opera soprano. So it really is kind of this like melting pot of really talented um, artists. But growing up, there weren't a lot of boys that wanted to do theater in Fort Worth. Texas is a really big football state,
Yeah.
sports state, not, and so I really in the late '90s, early 2000s, I was kind of one of the only boys that seemed to want to do this thing. So
Mhm.
that I think that helped me a little bit. I think it's
Yeah.
changed a lot more
Mhm.
because of the glee of it all and the
Yeah.
Hamilton of it all. And now theater is this cool thing to do, but it
Yeah.
wasn't the cool thing to do back then. But I loved it, and I was also really supported by my community. I got a lot of scholarships. I didn't have to pay for any of my training, my dance training or my theater training.
Yep.
So I got really lucky that I was supported by a
Yeah.
community that saw talent in me and told me to kind of to do this thing.
Yeah. What other shows did you do in before college, like high school and college,
Yeah.
regionally at
So
least?
regionally, so it was Peter Pan first, and then I played
Mhm.
Baby John and West Side Story. I played Jeffrey in Godspell. I did a summer stock season, that was Beauty and the Beast, and I was a dancing fork. Um, we did a chorus line. I played Mark. We did Oklahoma, and I was one of the dancing cowboy ensemble. We did South Pacific. I was also in the ensemble. Yeah, those were
Yeah.
the big ones. And I didn't realize I was kind of building a professional resume by
Yeah.
working at this really reputable regional theater that was bringing
Yeah.
in a lot of New York artists.
Yeah. And what advice would you have for anyone who's wishing to get into summer stock and do that regional theater consistently?
Oh goodness. Well, if you want to do it, show up to the auditions, right?
Yeah.
Um, work hard. It's a really interesting career path. It's a tough thing of the arts.
Yeah.
Um, Particularly now, as it's not so supported by our government. There's lots of arts cutting. So if it's something that you love, first of all, you have to love it, right?
Yeah.
So if you know that you love it deeply, then you have to pursue it with every fiber of your being. I mean, I was really, really driven. Yeah, even as a young kid. I mean, writing a letter to Mr. Ingram in the fifth grade, like essentially begging him for the role of Romeo. That was an early indication that like
Yeah.
my little 10, 11-year-old self was like gunning for roles and I was going to
Yeah.
do everything I could to get them. So it really is about working hard and honing your skills and spending the time in those studios, those voice lessons, those dance classes, those acting classes. Um, so do you take your love and then you work hard and then you go out and you try to make it happen.
Yes. So, kind of moving forward a little bit, you obviously went to NYU, and so my next question, what was it like workshopping Floyd Collins there? Because obviously the show had the like, concerned production of Jeremy Jordan, and like some kind of like how'd that come about? And then how do you look back on it now, especially with that recent production from 20 years on?
Yeah, I didn't know anything about Floyd Collins before I got to NYU. And
Hmm.
what's funny is that same year, my friend Ryan Scott Oliver was doing one of his new musicals at NYU
Hmm.
Steinhardt that same year, and I really wanted to do that musical. So
Yeah.
I was hoping to do the Ryan Scott Oliver musical, but the program had different ideas for me, and I got cast as Floyd in that production, and it was really kind of remarkable because Floyd Collins has not done that much. It
No.
hasn't really been seen in New York City since it was originally off Broadway at Playwrights Horizons, and so to be able to do it in New York with Nick Rouleau, who's also a big Broadway star, it was my
Yeah.
homework Collins. Um, we found ourselves as college kids doing a production of Floyd Collins, and so many people from our industry were coming to our college show because it's this musical that the industry is really curious about.
Yeah.
It's such an incredible score by Adam Gettle and such a wild concept to make
Hmm.
into a musical. And it really, for the first time, that show stretched me in ways I didn't think possible. Because I come from a dance background. I've always sung, but the majority of Floyd's show is stuck in a cave, and
Yeah.
so I really to take away my physicality, which is something that I kind of relied on as an actor, really stretched me as a performer to
Yeah.
have to like just sit there and use my voice and my face to tell a story theatrically. It really kind of changed the way I approach all of my work. And I've
Yeah.
been deeply in love with Floyd Collins ever since. And I even auditioned for the production at Lincoln Center.
Oh,
And I was pretty sad when I didn't get that call back.
yeah.
But, that Jeremy Jordan's pretty darn good.
Yeah. How do you, even in a show like Floyd Collins, and it's also by other shows too, how do you still try to incorporate your physicality, even if it's not a big, dancey, flashy, spectacle sort of show?
Yeah, I love coming from a dance background. I love watching physical actors. I think Meryl Streep is one of the best physical actors I've ever seen on screen, and I I learned something from my friend Ben Crawford, who played my Phantom when I did Phantom of the Opera on Broadway, and he kind of broke the body down into three different categories. He said there's characters that use their head, there's characters that use their chest and their heart, and there's characters that use their pelvis. And God, what was the word that he said? Their vitality is how he described it. And he said usually a character will choose two of those parts of the body, or a human will have two of those parts of the body. So when I played Raoul in Phantom of the Opera, um, Raoul definitely uses his chest because he's proud, he's rich, he owns the opera house, and he uses his vitality because he's going after the girl. He's very strong. He's very strong in his convictions, and so to lead with those parts of the body um, kind of really helped unlock how to physicalize certain characters,
Yeah.
right? When I played Britt Craig in Parade on Broadway, Britt is um, one, he's drunk. He's also very poor, and he is a reporter. He's all about getting the scoop. He has to stay on top of things. He has to go find that information, and so he really led with his head um, more than anything.
Yeah.
And then once he got the scoop, then he really lived in his vitality. So he was always head forward, always trying to get the information, as opposed to Raoul, who's chest forward. So yeah, I love physicality.
Yeah.
And I love how Ben kind of broke that down for me when
Yeah.
we taught a master class together, and I was like, that is super smart.
Yeah. Definitely. Now to kinda talk about a show that in my opinion, is very physical and very, like, vitality forward, I guess. I don't know how you best
Sure.
describe it, but, what was the process like for a chorus line? Obviously, it's a very dancey, vital show. Like, how was it difficult balancing the audition process with, I believe you were at the end of your college career at that point, transitioning to?
The thing about a chorus sign is it's something that I've studied since I studied dance. I went
Mhm.
to a dance studio where a chorus line was heralded as one of the best musicals of all time. So I
Yeah.
learned the opening number from my teacher when I was 15 years old. I learned one when I was 15 years old. So these are dances that have been in my body and in my brain since I was a teenager.
Yeah.
And I actually got my equity card doing a production of a chorus line in my hometown at age 18. And so it's a show that I've done. It's a show that I love. It's a show that I know so well. So that when I got to college and started auditioning for the Broadway revival in 2005 or six ish, um, it was easy for me to do.
Yeah.
I had my equity card, so it got me in the room and I already knew the dances,
Yeah.
so I didn't have to work too hard. I just showed up
Yeah.
every like I never quite got the role, but I always showed up and I always got the callbacks. And so it really was just about making sure I showed up and
Yeah.
reminded casting that I was there and reminded by York Lee that I existed, so that when
Yeah.
that first national tour came around, I they had seen me for a year and a half and I'd already had a chorus line on my resume. So
Yeah.
it seemed, I guess, like an easy choice for them, hopefully.
Yeah. When did you first start dancing? Like, obviously, you've kind of applied you grew up with the dance background, but like, how did that first start and how did that intertwine with theater for you? Of like before?
Yeah, I was always that kid that was, you know, sashaying around my house. Like I always loved dancing. I loved physicality. I loved watching music videos and recreating that movement and making my cousins learn dances to Britney Spears songs. So like just dance in general has always been a love of mine. And then when I started doing theater and taking actual dance class, I then realized that I had some I guess raw talent and technique that I didn't even realize that I had. So dance became this thing that became my love, especially in high school. Like I went to a performing arts high school and I got to choose whether I wanted to be a vocal major, a dance major, or a theater major. And I loved dance so much that I chose to be a dance major.
Mhm.
And I think because of all of that dance training, that kind of um, put me above the rest of the other dudes in Texas that were studying theater that were probably more actor singers.
Yeah.
Because I was able to go to those auditions and, do West Side Story at age 14 and do Beauty and the Beast and Oklahoma and a chorus line, right? So my training in high school was really dance focused because I loved it so much, and it was, you know, it was a physical education that wasn't putting on, you know, football pads and getting the knocked out of me on a field, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then that's why I chose to go to NYU as a vocal performance major because I had so much training in dance that I
Mm,
decided to study voice in college.
nice. Obviously times have changed, but going kind of back to a chorus line, what was it like being on national tour in 2005 and 2006 versus now you were just on Moulin Rouge last year? Like how much have national tours changed in like the 20-year time span?
Oh goodness, that's a wild question. It has been, gosh, almost 17 years since I toured last, and I don't know if touring has really changed that much. I'm
Mhm.
really lucky because both of the tours I've been on, both a chorus line, what was that, 2008 that was, and Moulin Rouge, um, they were both production contracts,
Yeah.
so the top tier contracts you can be on. So, um, I feel lucky that I had that opportunity to be on production contracts, and really it's me that changed more than anything on these tours
Definitely.
because I was 20 years old when left college to go on the first national tour of a chorus line, and so
Yeah.
I was young, I was excited, I was free, I was making the most money of my life, um, and then to choose to go out on tour with Moulin Rouge last year, um, I'm a man of a certain age now, and I have a partner, and I have cats, and I have a house in New York City, and so to choose to go on the road is just a different thing, but dreams are dreams, and I had to say yes because 'cause it's been a dream role of mine
Yeah.
for forever, but yeah, touring is hard, it's just it's a really cool way to see the world, um, but it is really difficult to do 8 shows a week and then travel on the day off and be in different climates and different altitudes and have to kind of figure out and navigate your way through a show, in a different space every week, it seems.
Yeah, for sure. Well, this might be a little of an odd question, but do you find you any similarities between, like, say, Mark and Christian, or any of the other characters you find yourself playing over the years?
Mm, I guess I'm not sure. Uh, I've been really lucky to play, like, a really wide range of characters throughout my life. I think earlier on in my career, I played a lot of young dudes, a lot of, hopeful guys like Mark. Um, when I did hair on Broadway and understudied Gavin Creel, like Claude is very, bright-eyed and youthful and energetic. Even Frank Abagnale Jr. in Catch Me If You Can, a really young, youthful, energy. And then as I've gotten older, I've been able to kind of graduate into other roles like Raoul in Phantom of the Opera, which feels more grounded and um, older and more settled. Christian kind of feels a mix between those two,
Yeah.
right? Christian is young and he's excited, but he's also brilliant. Is a composer, and you know, he writes all these songs and kind of makes a name for himself in a different country. So there's settled stuff in a Christian, but there's also this youthful vitality, and you know, and other roles that I've played have been like total weirdos, and like Banco and Scotland, PA, like
Yeah.
a stoner, drunk, wild man, and that is so different from everything I've ever done in my life. So, I don't know. I love playing different things. I like being challenged in different ways. I like looking at my resume and seeing, oh, I'm you can't really put me in a box.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Looking so this is a more of a looking back question, but looking back at your Broadway debut, you mentioned obviously Hair with Gavin Creel. If you had to describe your reaction and your feelings making your Broadway debut in one word, what would it be?
Terrifying.
That is so valid.
Yeah. I mean, the experience as a whole was completely life-changing.
Yeah.
I will never be the same because of it, but my literal Broadway debut happened the 3rd week of previews. I had never had a rehearsal. I was given a couple of hours on stage with a stage manager to go over my material. Gavin got sick. And, in swings and understudies, they don't really get to rehearse with the company. They kind of watch the company rehearse and take notes. And maybe they'll
Yeah.
slot in when people are at a costume fitting or if people are out for the day. But you don't really get to run the show until after opening night. At least that's what it used to be. That's
Yep.
what it was back in 2009. So it was truly terrifying. I was 21 years old and I was leading a Broadway company for the first time
Mm.
in my life without a rehearsal.
Yeah.
So thank God that company is amazing. They're all such good friends of mine still. And we had this phrase that was shoved with love. So I'm sure had deer in the headlights for most of that performance. And they kind of, floated me through that really, really wild, wild
Yeah.
day.
Obviously, with like later production and Hair being as much of an immersive production as it was,
Mm.
what was it like doing an immersive production, interacting with the audience back in 2009? Question mark. Where there definitely was nowhere near as many immersive productions as there are today.
Yeah, it was super fun. I mean, I think when we first got to the Al Hirschfeld Theater, um, Jordan Roth, who used to run G. Jamson theaters back in the day, he made this speech to our company and he said, "This is your space now. Do whatever you want with it." And so we kind of, and that was kind of at least the concept of the show as well. Diane Paulus made this concept that this group of hippies took over a Broadway house, and so we really did feel that ownership, and we really did feel like it was ours to kind of go and mess with.
Yeah.
So running out into the audience was a blast and something that I'd never quite experienced in my career. And I'm also watching Gavin Creel and Will Swenson and Casey Levy and all these unbelievable artists leading the way and showing me the way. And they had done it 2 times before I'd even joined the company, so it really was so fun, so freeing, right? I mean, we all had to take our clothes off in one scene, so that was another free part of the whole experience, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's really fun watching the industry kind of swing in the direction of immersive style theater. My
Hmm.
partner, David Wright Jr., is a part of the Masquerade Company right now, and I've seen it 3 times, and I'm just obsessed with it. I'm their new
Yeah.
super fan. But yeah, it also directed by Diane Paulus, so
Yes.
it really is. It's kind of cool to watch the industry shift more into this more 360 sensory experience for theater. I think that it's like the
100%.
future. Yeah.
Yeah. What was it like working with Diane and working with Gavin and Cassie and all these big names, but also just their craftsmanship and the way they approach their craft? How did that like, what was it like?
Yeah, it was a masterclass every single day, right? Watching Diane's genius vision come to life and then knowing that it was such a critical success and even a commercial success to a certain degree, that was just amazing to watch. To see people at the top of their game, Casey and Gavin and Will leading the company with one, such incredible talent and two, such incredible heart. They led the company both off stage and on stage. So I learned a lot about what it meant to be a lead performer. And that's not just showing up and doing the show to your best ability. It's showing up and advocating for your other company members and making sure that the vibes off stage are as amazing as the vibes
Yeah,
on stage. So yeah, when I say it was a transformative experience, that's an understatement.
definitely.
Yeah.
So, kind of moving ahead a little bit, about shows that have now become very famous in the present day. How did you for I remember I was doing research for this and I was very surprised about this, but on second thought, I was like, wait, this makes sense. How did you first get seen for Jack in the Newsies? Like, how did that first come about?
Oh man. How did that? I mean, I had to audition for it, right? So
Yeah.
I know that Jeremy Jordan was attached to the production for a really long time, but then I believe he got a film or maybe a television show. And so there was a certain workshop of Newsies right before they went to Paper Mill that Jeremy couldn't do. And so it was an audition process between me and another guy, and I'm not even remembering who it is now. But I remember being, I mean, Newsies is, I love Newsies. I mean, that film, um, is unbelievable. It really is kind of one of those cult films, one of those
Yeah,
Disney cult films, much like Hocus Pocus. So,
yeah.
also directed by Kenny Ortega, who's
Yes, the
like
same Kenny.
one of my heroes. Um, but yeah, it was really a lot of pressure. It was the first time that I'd ever worked for Disney. Um, the first time I'd ever been a part of a workshop that was so well funded.
Yeah,
Um, and I was really young and terrified and excited. Yeah, it was a really cool experience. And then, Bonnie and Clyde closed, so then Jeremy got to do it on Broadway.
yeah. Was there I know that was right before Paper Mill, but was there anything to your knowledge changed, cut, added? Like, was Jack's characterization changed, or was it kinda kept the same between
I mean,
Paper
Jack's
Mill?
characterization has kind of been the same since the '90s film,
Yeah.
right? I mean, and, if I'm trying to think, because I did the show at the Muni a few years back. Actually, it was before the pandemic, so it was, like, now a lot a few years back, but, there wasn't much that changed between the workshop that I did and the Muni production, and if there was, it was really kinda small stuff that I
Yeah.
couldn't really put my finger on, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. So next thing I want to talk about, in what in my opinion is a very underrated show. And I kind of hope you explain a little bit about this, but Scotland, PA, which personally I love the original movie, but for the rest of my audience, do you mind explaining a bit about the general plot of Scotland, PA, for those who may not know, be familiar?
Yeah, Scotland, PA is Shakespeare's Macbeth set in a fast food restaurant chain a la McDonald's in like the 1970s.
Yeah,
Um, so it's this kind of like parody version of the Scottish play, where the goings on of Macbeth are within a fast food restaurant.
yeah.
Yeah,
Did
which was
were
fun.
you over obviously, you mentioned you've done Romeo and Juliet and you've done other
Mm,
Shakespeare productions,
mm.
but did Lonnie in his direction really try to drive home the, Scottish play Shakespeare parallels from the original movie, or were you kind of encouraged to make its own parody-esque work and not and I don't wanna say separate the movie from the musical, but not lean into it as much, I guess?
Yeah, to be completely honest, I decided to not watch the film before
Oh,
going
yeah.
into the musical. Um, I really I don't like to see other people's work of a character before I begin my processes so
Yeah.
that I can kind of bring myself to a role in a way that I don't have any preconceived notions.
Mhm.
Um, but Lonnie did a great job of drawing those parallels just in the direction. But the book written by Michael Mitnick was so ridiculously funny. And the music by Adam Guan was really kind of remarkable. So what we were creating was the musical version of the film, which is absolutely a Shakespeare parody.
Yeah.
And I just had a blast. An anecdote about that is that I actually auditioned for Mac, like the lead guy, and I really, 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 really wanted it. And in my audition, I did the Mac material, and it didn't go as well as I wanted it to. And then Lonnie handed me the Banco material and said, "Will you
Mhm.
go out and learn this side?" And I kind of rolled my eyes, and I was like sad about it because I knew that my Mac audition didn't go well. And so I was like, "Okay, Banco, the stoner best friend, the sidekick, cool." I did hair, like, I got this, like, we'll be fine. So I kinda walked back into the audition room, like, not even caring about what happened with
Yeah.
Banco, and that actually served me so well because my relaxed nature and kind of over it attitude had that entire room howling. And I didn't realize that I was being funny. I was just being kind of the stoner drunk version of myself or
Yeah.
like the people that I grew up with rather. So it ended up being such a gift to play Banco. And like one of my favorite roles I've ever played and really kind of showed the industry a totally different side of myself that I've ever been able to show it before. So yeah, I
Yeah.
I really loved Scotland, PA.
Yeah. Do you see the show getting done on Broadway in a larger theater or touring, or do you think it kind of do you ever see it getting done again?
I I hear that they're still working on it and that
Oh,
like
really?
Ana Luisas' set lives up in Minneapolis, St. Paul area because it was an incredible set.
Yeah.
And they even did a production of it again in Minneapolis?
Oh, really?
Question mark. So, and had some friends that even worked on it. So I I don't know if it's still being workshopped or still being worked on, but it would just be a dream. I would love it if that show made its way back to New York,
Yeah.
because I just had so much fun, and also, some of my best friends in the world that I met on that show, Taylor Ramon Jones and Alana Saunders, like, if it wasn't for Scotland, PA, I wouldn't have 2 of my best friends.
Yeah.
So,
No,
yeah,
totally.
it would be awesome to bring that one back.
No, definitely. And then kind of sort of not really wrapping up here, but moving on to what in my opinion, what is my favorite shows of all time, Parade. How
Um,
familiar were you with Parade, Pride Gang cast in as Brit, obviously?
not that familiar. Of course, like, that score is so amazing, and so
Yeah.
going through musical theater school, I sang Old Red Hills of Home, for like song analysis classes. And I've had other friends sing tunes from that show, but I'd never seen a production of it, nor was it one of those uh, cast albums that I spent a lot of time with.
Mhm.
Um, so I had to do a lot of research for the show when I got that initial audition. So yeah, I didn't know too much about it, and now it's one of my favorite shows of all time.
Yeah. Did you do any dramaturgy or historical research or mainly about the production itself?
Yeah, because it's based on actual events, I did
Mhm.
a lot of research. I read a book about the whole situation. I did a lot of research on Britt Craig, at least all of the stuff that kind of exists out there in the world, and then Michael Arden and I kind of helped shape. Michael helped me shape who Britt was going to be in this production. Um, so yeah, the historical references were really kind of important. To like digest before
Yeah.
stepping into it just because really wanted to honor that time. We really wanted to honor that story. And we had Michael Arden helming the ship. So
Yeah.
there's no way we were going to go wrong with that.
No. Would you consider Brit as a character? Obviously, not was the historical figure, but also the character
Mm.
himself. Would you consider him a what we would call a bad person in completely subjective terms, or is he more a product of his time?
You know, the thing I learned in acting school is that if you play a villain, you can't judge your character. Or even if you don't play a villain, you can't judge your character. So I, in my telling of the story uh, and Britt Craig of it all, I believe that he absolutely was a product of his time.
Yeah.
A man that didn't really come from a lot of means, and
Mhm.
that really had to fight um, for money, for food, for credit, for credibility, um, and the internet didn't exist back then, so reporters really had to be boots on the ground in a way uh, that was important.
Yeah.
You know, there's also a lot of historical references to Brit um, being a drunk, and so to kind of understand why someone would turn to the bottle um, for their problems. I have some alcoholism that runs in my family, and so to be able to kind of delve into that psyche of that character was interesting. So
Mhm.
I could kind of weave in some of my own experiences with people that really use alcohol to get by. But yeah,
Yeah.
he's an interesting dude,
Yeah.
that Britt Craig, and really really well written um,
Definitely.
by those men.
Yeah. Do you think I understand I obviously never saw the original production, but I understand his role was definitely diminished by the time of the 2022 or 2022, 2020 pre-revival or 24,
Hmm.
one of those years. Do you think Craig's diminished role makes sense in the context of the show as a whole, or do you think that some of the stuff that was cut, irregardless of quality or whatever, should have been brought back?
You know, This was a question because what's funny is that Jason Robert Brown's favorite, at least orchestration,
Mhm.
um, is Big News,
Yeah.
Britt Craig's original first song in the
Yeah.
show. Um, and so he was even teasing me during our time with New York City Center, that like I should be ready to sing Big News at the drop of a hat because he just wanted to hear that big orchestra play his favorite
Yeah.
tune from the show,
Yeah.
essentially, that he wrote. So I had this dream that they might throw it back in.
Mhm.
Um, we ran behind on tech, and so I didn't ever get to sing Big News
Oh.
with the big orchestra like like Jason wanted. Um, but I think in retrospect and hindsight, um, we live in a different time than the early '90s. I think that to focus the narrative more on Frank and Lucille and less on all of the supporting characters is it was smarter.
Yeah.
As much as I hate to admit that because I would have loved to have two major songs in the show.
Okay.
I think that their reworking of it and that Don Mar production was really smart.
Yeah.
Um, and I trust both Jason and Michael's instincts on that, and I was simply there to be a vessel for this really important
Yeah.
story.
Well, I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, but they kept Big News in the cast recording, correct? Or am I thinking of something else?
They didn't. I've never sung it. I only
What's
sang
why am I blanking on the song then?
I
What
only
is
sang Real Big News. Real
Oh,
Big
Real Big
News,
News, that's what I'm
yeah,
thinking of, Real Big News.
yeah.
I
So Big News used to be in the show, and then
Yes.
I sang Real Big News, which is like the second part of that
Yeah.
song.
Okay.
Essentially the same song, but the Big News is more kind of like a drunk um,
Oh, yeah,
introduction to Britt Craig,
yeah.
and then Real Big News is when he gets the story. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So, kind of wrapping up here, I always ask everyone this question. Obviously, you've had a very long, very successful career, but if you had to name one dream show or one dream role in that show, what would it be?
Oh man, I get asked this question all the time, and I
I'm so,
rarely have a good answer, but I'm gonna find
so
one. I'm gonna find
sorry.
one. No, please. No, please. Okay, okay. I will say this one because it's a show that I've done, but it's a role I've not played yet.
Yeah.
So because it had hands on a hard body and it only lived on Broadway for about 2 or 3 months, I would love for it to be revived in a really incredible, significant way.
Mhm.
And I would love to play Benny, who
Yeah.
that was played by the brilliant Hunter Foster.
Yes.
Um, and the older I get, the better I'll be for the role because
Yeah.
he's an older guy. But just being from Texas, that show meant so much to me. I didn't really have to act all that hard. I just had to make fun of everyone that I grew up with and put on that thick accent and do the thing. So it would be really fun to kind of lead that production and be Benny. So,
Yeah,
so
definitely.
who knows?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. It was really fun talking to you.
You too, Maya. Thanks for
Thank
having
you.
me.